Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me. We are going to wait just a minute or two to make sure everyone gets in. And I get the thumbs up from Jen that everything seems to look good on the back end. One thing that I will point out, when I'm giving my presentation, I will not be able to see you nor the Q&A panel. If you look on your on your dashboard over to the right, there's a Q&A tab. During the presentation, if you have a question on something that's on the slide or something that I say, put it into one of those Q&A tabs. At the end of my presentation, I can come back into this mode where we can go through the Q&As, and I'll be happy to discuss or answer any that you've got. Other than that, we have some pretty interesting information for you today. It's going to be around security systems and integration with production systems and your security plan and so forth. My name is Tom Clancy. I am with Alert Security Consulting. I'm the CEO, and I'm also a CPP. The things we're going to talk about today, I've been in technology for, my whole life. And security technology specifically for about the last 20 years. I've been actively working in the cannabis industry for about 7 years now, and have implemented literally hundreds of security plans. I've written I believe 30 or 40 different security plans, all of which were licensed, were accepted, and we received licenses. I've built about 30 or 40 different facilities, from cultivation /grow to processing, and including obviously dispensaries in, I believe, 10 different states now, thereabouts. So I'm going to open my presentation. As I say, please put in your questions, and this will be exciting. Yes, my name is Tom Clancy. Yes, I am an author. I'm not that author. And unless you've read some of my papers, you haven't read my stuff. So I'll start with that. Let's go ahead and get started. So integrating technology with cannabis operations, security, safety, production, and regulatory compliance. Big title. It will make sense as we go through the presentation. This is a recent white paper that I published on this topic. It's some of the information from this presentation, but a lot more. If you are interested in a copy of that, please email me at tom@alertsecurityconsulting.com. I will be happy to send you a copy of that. And it has helped out many of my clients to just kind of get a background of what we're talking about as we get started. So what are we going to talk about today? Security and life safety systems as they're applied to the cannabis industry, which is different than other industries. Obviously, and those are specifically based on risk assessments, and we build a cannabis security plan, which is submitted with your application. And very importantly, and I make sure that my clients understand this, when you submit that security plan, you are signing a contract with the state that you are going to do everything in that plan. Sorry, I should turn that off. So what role do these systems play in the cannabis industry? Cannabis is one of the first industries outside of a few like banking and pharmacy and a few others that have really defined what they say you have to do in security. In the other industries that I work in, it's really a function of risk avoidance, what's the assessment, and we can put in essentially whatever we want. So why should they be integrated? Why should the security, life safety, and production systems be integrated? What are the pros and cons? What are the costs? How should they be integrated? And then we'll get to questions after that. So what are those systems? We'll start with what's commonly referred to as access control. Hang on. Yes, ma'am? There's no screen share. Okay. Let me go back. Thank you. So I am told that I was not sharing my screen. I should be sharing it now, and I apologize. I'll go back and very quickly cover those first two slides. Here we go. One thing that I did mention was this white paper that I'm happy to share with you if you email me at tom@alertsecurityconsulting.com. Security assessments and the security plan really define what the security systems and life safety systems are in your cannabis industry. They play a specific role in the cannabis industry, and you are essentially signing a contract with the state when you submit that security plan. So that's a large part of what we do and what I do. Why should they be integrated? Pros and cons, costs, and how should they be integrated? Very important. So what are these systems? Access control is where we'll start. It starts with the perimeter fencing. As you see on the slide, we have truck gates, we have man gates, we have guard shacks, etc. And we're really trying to define what is our controlled area with fences and with gates and so forth. It includes, obviously, doors. Most of these entrances have card readers either at the door or at the gate or at you might have an arm that comes up and allows you to card in your car. So at doors, then you have different controls within the system so that I can, in fact, open a door remotely. Quite often, video intercoms are used at perimeters so that someone can come up, press a button, talk to someone inside, and someone inside can interact with them and open or release a door, et cetera, et cetera. One of the most important concepts when we're starting our design is called crime prevention through environmental design, CPTED, CIPTED. This really starts at the building design. We look at the application of the building. If it's a grow, we have certain things that we need to do to make sure that we can control who can go into the grow area, who can go into the trim room, who can go into the shake area, where the scales are, et cetera. So the building design is vital for us to be able to control the flow because the same people are not allowed into those different locations. The site plans include the entire site around the building. Things like trees, keeping the trees trimmed, keeping the shrubs trimmed back so that you don't have hiding spots for adversaries to hide. Security planters, you probably have seen those large planters sitting out in front of buildings. Well, those are actually there by design. They're tied into a post in the ground. They can withstand X amount of concussion, and they're there to protect, vulnerable parts of the building like plate glass windows and so forth, so that adversaries don't try and crash through in their car or their truck or whatever. Bollards are often used in areas like corners of buildings to avoid that same auto collision, and around entrances and exits, just to protect those from adversaries. So surveillance is one topic that is a very big discussion in cannabis. It is in many other industries, but in cannabis in particular. And today the technology, the sensor technology, is improving dramatically. We're using multi-megapixel cameras. We have technologies where we can view an entire view all the time, but digitally zoom in on something that's happening within the scene without losing the rest of that site awareness. So there are of course, different types of cameras, different manufacturers of cameras. There are cameras with other types of technology, like thermal technology. We'll use those not typically in cannabis. We'll use those in long range. I use those in critical infrastructure for power stations so that we can see an adversary coming a long way out. Infrared is essentially assisting the cameras at night in night vision, so that you've got a better view, and if it's very dark out and there is no ambient light or manufactured light. There are more and more analytics being deployed in cameras. Many of the cameras now support a certain level of analytics. And some of the common ones are directional. Is everyone moving from right to left? And then one person goes from left to right. Are all of the cars going that direction? And then at a certain point, they turn to go that direction. Counting how many people are in the area. Oftentimes, in some states, the states actually require that you show you can detect loitering. And then it's your security, part of your security plan has to go and disperse those people who are loitering. Tripwire is, you can denote a controlled space, and if someone crosses into that space or crosses that tripwire, you can have an alarm or at least notify someone. So we use the appropriate camera and the appropriate sensors based on the application. Within dispensaries, you have areas within the sales area and the point of sale where you have to have very close. It's more of a casino application where we have to see the hands, we have to see the product, we have to see the pricing, the scale, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to match the right camera and the right sensor to the right application. In large grows, for example, you've got very environmentally unfriendly. It's like an outdoor environment. So your technology has to be able to withstand that kind of condition. So another system that many of you probably have them in your homes. Nearly every office has them, and all of these facilities have to have them. And those are intrusion systems. So in some states, you have to have multiple intrusion systems. Some states, you have to have multiple intrusion systems installed by different integrators and managed by different third-party monitoring companies. So some states get really into this. So you obviously have an alarm panel where you arm the system and you disarm the system. You interact with it there. There are a number of different types of sensors that we tie to these. Most commonly, you're always going to have sensors on the doors so that if they're opened when they're not supposed to be, obviously you want to get an alarm. In areas that have offices where someone can break the window and enter through the office, We typically have glass break sensors, and throughout the facilities, we have motion sensors. What you're really trying to do is, you have to detect an issue. You have to delay the movement of the person or, the adversary through the facility, and then you have to respond to it. So you have multiple alarm types, and often you'll program them so that we have to have at least 2 alarms to really have the police deployed or so forth. So there are different rules around these, but those are all tied to the intrusion panel. These alarms are also integrated, and I'll get into this integration, back to the cameras, so that if we have a glass break, the cameras that are in the area may increase their frame rate and will mark this video for later forensic use. So the integration is vital with these intrusion alarms. Emergency notifications and communications. These are really vital, particularly when you have a large grow, where you'll have people in different areas of the grow facility. And if there is an emergency in one area, you have to be able to tell your employees and everyone else of the emergency and what to do. So we want you to exit. We want you to exit on the west side of the building, or stay in place. So emergency notification, depending on the size of the space, typically ties into overhead communication systems. You have an incident management part of this system, which really trains your employees and your managers on how to respond. Excuse me. And it also includes your security radios and so forth, so that security is always in communication with management and incident management. As you're, I'm sure, aware, every building in the U.S. has a requirement for a fire alarm system. The level of that fire alarm system is a function of the building and the application inside the building. So you recognize a fire alarm pole. That is often tied into it's always tied into a communication system to the local fire department, or at least to a third party. And that will typically also tie into the emergency notification system. The more current systems tie into the emergency notification systems. The older ones just set an alarm and a bell and wake you up in the middle of the night. So what role do they play in the cannabis industries? Well, as I mentioned, and you may have heard me, the cannabis industry is one of the first industries where you literally are signing a contract that says you are going to do these things. And if the state comes in and you're not doing them, then you are highly at risk of losing your license. So the objective is to really protect the employees, any visitors, your product, well, depending on what operation you're running. It's still predominantly a cash business, so you have cash and cash payments. And then very important is the brand. That is potentially one of the highest risks of any kind of adversarial attack or diversion by an employee. When that gets out to the press, that's very bad for the brand. And there are brands that have started out in this industry, had a few bad breaks, and they're no longer around. As I said, you need to have all of these operating and implemented to maintain your license, your compliance with your state license. The states will come in and do unannounced inspections, and they will literally go down the checklist of what you said you were going to do and make sure that you're still doing it. Oftentimes, states have requirements for a 24-hour replacement for a failed device. If a camera goes out, you have to replace it in 24 hours. You have to notify the state. And so you really have to stay on top of this. Often we'll stock spares on site so that we can make sure that we're within the 24-hour replacement. Most importantly, or quite important, is supporting the production systems. The name of the game in cannabis is yield, 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 yield. What am I getting out of my grow? How much am I managing through the processing? What yield am I getting out of that? And then therefore, what can I sell my product for in the dispensary? So spending the money on security systems and not tying them into, for example, the greenhouse systems and the head house management systems is a giant miss. They are there to be used in conjunction with the cultivation systems, and in fact, it also in processing. Processing is depending upon the type of chemicals that are being used to process into what form. You have the potential for explosions. You have environmental systems that have to be running because you have gases and so forth that can build up. So the security systems very much can support those environmental systems, and obviously we have to have explosion-proof devices if you're using some of the chemicals that present that issue. In dispensing, every state has seed to sale tracking requirements. So the security systems can hand in glove work with the inventory tracking systems. They have to have good visibility and integration with the point of sale. One of the techniques that I really like is having the surveillance system tied to the point of sale so that you literally are scrolling the receipt in the view of the surveillance system that is capturing that transaction. So there are multiple vendors that can do that. Very, very effective. In some of the more sophisticated retail operations, queue management is also something that we can help with. Queue management is basically some of those analytics, counting how long someone is standing in line, counting how many people are in line, what's the duration of them in line, and so forth. So management can, in larger dispensaries, that can make a difference. And then, of course, cash management. Boy, we spent a lot of time talking about cash management and how do we manage it, particularly in the dispensary environment. How much cash is in hand? How much do we have in the till? What does a point of sale operator actually take out with them? How often do we pull? So all of that cash management, that all has to be documented with video and with access control. We know the manager just took the cash. We can see it on the video. They never opened the door that went to the cash to the safe. So where'd the cash go? Somewhere between those 2 points, it disappeared. So there are lots of things that we need to do to support these other systems. And then obviously in transporting, the highest risk area within the cannabis industry is transport. We have to be able to track the vehicles. We have to be able to track the product. We have to have emergency operations in the event of an adversary trying an attack. We have reports that have to be generated back to the state, which is what was the bill of lading, what person or people, typically you have to have two people in a delivery, what people were there, where were they located, with one in the back, one in the front, and then GPS. Typically, we'll have GPS on all the delivery vehicles to make sure we know where they were and they haven't gone off their route. So why should we integrate all these systems? We've talked a little bit about supporting the operations. Why should we integrate these in total? Well, situational awareness is perhaps one of the most important concepts that in security we strive to improve. So if we have an alarm that's going off in a certain area of the building, we need that alarm, all the associated data, including video, what type of alarm is it, if it's a door ajar, in other words, somebody opened the door without having approval from a card. So all of that stuff needs to be delivered to the appropriate person or people in a format. Typically, we like to tie it to a smartphone or a smart pad that security has with them at all times, and they can then respond to any of those alarms. The fewer gaps in coverage you have, meaning the better visibility that you have in the facility, the better alarm management we have. If we have a glass break at one end of the building and another alarm at the other end of the building, I can't be in two places, so I need to see both alarms. The appropriate technology to mitigate a specific risk. Therein lies part of what a security consultant really can help you with. There are situations that we need to avoid, and I have seen some people go in and say, well, we're going to do that with surveillance, when in fact it's an access control question, et cetera, et cetera. So using the appropriate technology, you can't solve every problem with one technology. You have to use the appropriate technology. And then as you see in our plan, starting at the perimeter, we build concentric circles of security and security technology and security, protocols. We have someone at a desk. What are they required to do? What does security do? So you have technologies, you have building design, and you have protocols that are intended to, to deter, deny, detect. Those are some of the standard bywords in the security business. So some of the cons, the design period takes a little bit longer. I have seen systems integrators who just want to come in and throw up the cameras and the card readers and they're out the door. We take the time to design literally maps of this camera is connected to this card reader and these two alarms, and we're calling it this, and this is the nomenclature. So we have to build all of that out and make sure that as we're implementing it, all of those relationships are built. It does potentially have a little bit more cost, but it's the return on it is astronomical. So how should they be integrated? And this is the last section that we'll cover. You really want to today integrate all of these technologies with software. The day was when a security integrator, and I was president of a very large security integration company for 10 years. A security integrator or electrician says, just give me a dry contact and I'll fire it and we'll go to the panel and I'll tell you. Well, that is not the way we want to integrate these. We want a software relationship where that camera, that alarm, that door contact, that floor plan, they are all related and they all interact literally anywhere we want them to. So Couple examples in growing and cultivating cannabis. There's a certain period of time when you're tricking the plant to think that it's night. I think that's for 14, I forget how long, 14 days, something like that. So that room must be dark. And it's often done with shades. As you see in the lower right-hand side, they're pulling some shades over to produce a dark environment. If suddenly there is a bright light that gets through, the shade fails or whatever, you're at risk of losing millions of dollars if you don't report that. So we'll tie our surveillance systems in so that any change in the conditions in the environment are reported back to someone. We will also send an alarm to security if there's an AC failure. The humidity level and the temperatures, particularly in the grows, cultivations, they really must be maintained at a very specific environmental level. Fan failures, water wall failures, all of those are things that we need to tell someone very quickly. And of course, if the irrigation system has issues, we need to let them know about that as well. We are tracking, as I mentioned, from seed to sale, all of the seed to the plant, to the group of plants, to the bundle of product. So we're tracking that all along until they sell it to the consumer. If there is an issue, in other words, we have an imbalance, we're missing tags, we're moving a lot from grow room 1 to grow room 2, we're supposed to have X number of tags, suddenly there are 2 tags missing. The surveillance that we have on that move is very important to understand, was this an internal diversion, which is typically going to be your largest issue is employee theft, diversion. So we need to make sure that we have a really good view of all of the movement and the employees throughout the facility so that we can help operations and management identify any issues. Excuse me. The building management system also has the ability to send alarms or notifications to the security system. So, for example, if the building management system notifies the security team that there's a malfunction and it also captures the video, then emergency notifications can immediately kick off any emergency management that has to be done. So if there's an issue with one of the systems in building management, we need to let security know that they need to enact an emergency management event. I think that's self-explanatory. One very, very important topic is training. Training is absolutely vital to the successful implementation of anything around your security systems, your security plan. I've had clients who I go in and do an assessment a year after they've been open, and the employees haven't had training for 9 months. You can't ask your employees to understand what happens if you've got an active shooter or you have a tornado or you have a fire. They're not going to just naturally know what to do. You have to train them so that they know how to respond. In this situation, what I'm talking about in training is security training, really cross-training between production and security. Security has to understand the basics of how the production systems operate so that if there's an incident, they recognize it, they can report it, and probably you typically want to train them to take a couple first steps in securing the situation. Again, production has to also know the basics about the security systems. That allows them to observe sensitive areas. I often have management within large grows. All the monitoring capability that we have in security, there is at least some subset or all of it that's available to production management. So they can tell when it's out half an acre out that way and someone's out working out there, they can see what they're doing and utilize it for sensitive areas. So I will now switch back into the other pane, and we can go through any kind of questions. So I have no Q&A. I must have described everything perfectly. If you have any, please feel free to put them in now. And if you don't, as I said, if you would like a copy of the white paper that I recently published on this topic, email me at tom@alertsecurityconsulting.com. Thank you very much.